Welcome to the Little Beading Closet. I'm Sherry. Today we're going to be making the Olympian Ovals beaded bracelet. You can make it as a bangle or add a clasp, and directions for both are included. So let's get started. For this project, you're going to need 3 sizes of seed beads, size 15s, size 11s, and size 8s, and 4mm bicone crystals. I'll be using a size 12 beading needle along with some wildfire and .006 today. Okay, really quick before we get started, you can see that I made this one as a bangle, or you could add a clasp if you'd like. Make sure you check out the description below for information on how to turn it into a bangle or information for adding a clasp. We're going to begin the first building block of our bracelet different than the rest. This will help ensure that we don't have any knots that will be in the way of work later on in the bracelet. So start by picking up 2 size 8s, then 1 11, 3 15s, and 1 11. Next, pick up 1 8, 1 15, 1 bicone, 1 15, and 1 8. Next, an 11, 3 15s, and 11, and finish off with 2 size 8s. So I'll let you take a look at that. I'm going to bring these down to the end of my thread. Now that we're almost to the end of the thread, I want to knot this, and I won't need my tail unless I'm adding a clasp. So if you want to add a clasp, I would suggest leaving a tail. If you're going to do bangle style, it won't be necessary. But being able to knot the thread here between the size 8s will give you ample room to go ahead and hide that knot between the 8s. So I'm just going to pull it down, pull it tight with my fingers. You can use pliers. I'm going to probably give it just one more quick knot. And then we'll move on to what will be the regular pattern for the rest of the beads picking up throughout the bracelet. To be prepared for the next step, come through 2 8s and come out the 2 8s right here. Needle back around the side of my bracelet, which is the 11, 3 15s, and 11. And then I'm going to come through the center of my bracelet, this 8, coming through the 8 and all the beads until we get to the next 8. And come out the next 8. Wow. Maybe one more pass. Here we go, into the 8 and coming out the 8. So now we have our first little section started. After this, it will be much more repetitive. So if you're going to add a clasp, you would have a long tail here, or if you're doing it in a bangle style, you don't need the tail. Now we're going to pick up the one side of our bracelet. For the side, it's 1 11, 3 15s, and 1 more 11, and that makes up the side of our bracelet. We're going to come up for the center of the bracelet again, this time picking up 4 of our size 8 beads, and then we'll need the other edge of our bracelet, which is an 11, 3 15s, and an 11. Now, for me, it's easier to push my needle up. I'm just gonna turn my work over, come into the 8, through the 15, the next 15, and come out an 8. So here we are, we have our second unit attached. You want to needle through the side of your bracelet, which is the 11, 3 15s, and 11. Go ahead and pull your thread through, and then come up through the center again, which is the 8s, beginning in an 8 and coming out of an 8. Now we're ready to pick up our next little unit. So we need the side of our bracelet, again, the 11, 3 15s, and an 11. The next center section, which will be an 8, a 15, a bicone, a 15, and an 8. And then the other side of our bracelet, which is an 11, 3 15s, and an 11. So with this on our needle, we're going to be needling into the center 8s here, pulling it through. Now I need to needle through the one side of my bracelet, which is the 11, 3 15s, and 11. And then I will needle through the center of my bracelet, which is the 8, 15, bicone, 15, and 8. And pull it up. We have 3 sections on. I'm just going to continue working on my bracelet until I have probably about 14 of the bicone centers added. I have 14 bicones on this strip right here, and that's what I use to make this bangle right here on my wrist, 14. This one, which is much bigger, as you can tell, has 16. To help you plan accordingly, I think it's safe to say that you'll lose about an inch of length by adding the size 15s along the edge. I've added 14 of my bicones, and now I just need to come back up through my center section one more time, going through 1 8, ending at the next 8, and pulling my thread through. Now if I would like to turn this into a bangle, at this point I would no longer need my tail and cut it off, and making sure that this was round and not twisted anywhere, I would be coming out of this 8 over here and picking up 1 11, 3 15s, and 1 11, and come into my group of 8 where we started our bracelet. Just like so. Pull that through. And then as you can see, you would just have to connect the top part with 1 more 11, 3 15s, and 1 more 11. And come back down through your center over here, the 8, 15, bicone, 15, and 8. Pulling this all through. Now you have a seamless transition from one segment into the next, and we're going to get our needle ready to add 15s along the edge. What you want to do is needle through 1 11 and 3 15s. Make sure you're coming out of the 15s. Pull your thread through. At this point, we will start adding 15s along the edge. To add my clasp, and I've decided to go with this one, I only have on 13 bicones. You may need to adjust your size a little bit depending on the size of your clasp. And knowing that when we add the 15s along the edge, the bracelet will shrink in a little bit. So what I'm going to do, coming out of my 4/8 here, we'll go ahead and put on the clasp. So out of these 4/8, I'm going to pick up 1 11, come through my clasp, bring it down to my bracelet, and I'm going to pick up 1 more 11 and come back in and down through my 4/8. There we go. Coming out of the 4/8, I'll go ahead and pick up 1 11, come through my clasp again, picking up 1 more 11, and come back up through these 4/8. So I'll have it sitting next to my bracelet. I retraced my thread path a couple of times and came back through my size 8s, and now I'm going to get in position to start adding the size 15s along the edge. So I'm going to needle through 1 of my 11s and 3 15s. So I want to be exiting the 15s, and then we'll be ready to start adding the 15s along the sides of our bracelet. Whether you're adding a clasp or making a bangle style, you'll have come to this point where you're exiting 3 15s. To add 15s along the edge, pick up 3 more 15s, skip the 2 11s here, and come into your next set of 3 15s and pull your needle through. At this point, I really hope that you're using a size 12 beading needle. Otherwise, it might be difficult to get that second pass through your 15s. So we're coming out of 3 15s, picking up 3 15s, and needling into the next set of 3 15s. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to repeat that process, kind of giving it a nice snug pull every time. For this side, we'll pick up 3 15s, come into the next set of 3 15s, and pull our needle through. You'll do that all the way around on one side. I've been adding my 15s down here along my side of my bracelet, and as you can see, it starts looking a little uneven, this side and this side. That's okay, because when you finish the other side, it will work its way out. Before I add my clasp, I do want to just go ahead and complete both sides of 15s, keeping an even tension. That way it will have the same length to both sides of your bracelet. I went ahead and added the other end of my clasp, and I've completed the Olympian Ovals beaded bracelet. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and until next time, have a beautiful day. I I'm running short on thread and I'm going to need to add some. And adding thread, I want to put it here in the section of 8s so you can hide the knot. What I'll do is just come into 2 of my 8s, and then I will pick up a new piece of thread, knot it onto my old thread. So my new thread is going to go onto my old thread. Pulling it down, making it tight. And then I will take my old thread, which I leave my needle on, take my old thread and knot it onto my new thread, pulling it tight. And then I'll take the tail of my new thread and my new thread and knot those together once. I will go ahead, remove the needle from my old thread and put it on my new thread. With my needle now on my new thread, I'll come into the next 2/8 of the center section, pull my needle through, and pull my thread and knot in between. At this point, I can trim these off and continue.